Just say.
Hello and welcome again. We were just having a very depressing discussion, but welcome back for another week of What's the Damage, companion show to the incredibly well-known and popular real play D&D show Roll for Damage, soon to be a major motion picture. That's not true. Our heroes had a bit of a rough one last week. There were no more spiders, thankfully, but they did have a disturbing encounter in the desert, which left them burnt up, singed, and missing some of their most precious items. Uh, Also, I think they were feeling a bit sad about that, so there was some emotional damage as well. Today, me and my guests will be discussing this tragic loss and also sharing some tips for brand new baby DMs. Should be fun. As always, stick around after the stream for links and resources to support the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement. Thank you to Sunbird and Lady Meows, who designed our logo and wrote our theme. Very talented, the both of them. You can find their info on our Twitch page. As always, I'm your host, Truth Venson, and this is What's the Damage? And we're back. Okay, joining me today is our favorite DM, Serenity, here to talk about DMing, appropriately enough. The wonderful Jake, who plays Oriana, and the ever funny Jay, who plays Dobby. How you guys doing? You had a rough session. I know what the physical and monetary damage was, but how's the emotional damage? How are we feeling?
I'm feeling terrible.
I don't think they've made words for the emotions I felt that night. Yeah, it's bad.
I just wish the player was as good at Oriana as Riddles, and that would have gone so easily.
Yeah, dude. I feel like Serenity just thinks we're smarter than we think we are, and it just goes over our heads most of the time.
I feel like maybe I could have been a little less mean, but my whole thing is you're online, you're not at a table, and so it was like I don't know I know you guys have your group chat, which is why I took it into Whispers, but there's still the option to like chat to people and like send them something and get help, and so I had to kind of I was like, well, if I give you just whatever time, you're eventually going to figure it out because you're going to Google it or you're going to get other people to help you or whatnot. And so I was like, I got to put a time limit on it. And so that's kind of what I did. Also, there had to be stakes to it. Like if it was just like, oh, you get forever and there's no stakes, you're just going to sit and wait for you. Eventually you'll figure it, you'll probably figure it out. So,
To clarify, Internet, I did not cheat. I did not Google. I did not do anything.
Yeah,
I just suck at riddles.
We can all second that, but Serenity, did the time-old tradition of Sun Tzu, which is divide and conquer, and she conquered us all.
I didn't divide you. You guys made the decisions. He didn't even say anything.
Yo, you were like, okay, one person, and then it'd be equivalent trade. So two.
Well, yeah.
What we didn't do is two people.
He's smart. He's a smart guy.
Yeah. Which, hey, man.
High intelligence, man.
We did not think that out. And we took all the beatings.
Yeah. Honestly, I was expecting one of you to like make the argument that, hey, I'm a fucking adventurer. I'm worth 2 peasants. Yo.
Well,
But
that's what Jake's character tried to do.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
problem
Oriana
is
tried to put it up,
they're
but
being used as slaves. Like he doesn't care that
Yeah.
you can play a violin or that you can throw knives really well or whatever or punch people. That's not what he was going to be using them for. Right? So,
I'm just
backbreaking
saying.
labor.
yeah.
Back-breaking labor.
Chain gang, man. Just be on the chain gang.
Wonderful stuff. So Serenity, why don't you tell me a bit about designing those games? Because obviously you prepped like what was going to go on with the gin.
Yeah. So I actually had a name for that little adventure, which was a slave to the game, and it was just this idea of coming upon this creature, and if you decided to go toe to toe, there were going to be 3 things. And I wanted to give 3 things because I was like, I want to have multiple options. If it was just like you have to fight this thing, then there's I always like to have many different ways of being able to defeat a challenge. And so if they spoke to this thing, he would have 3 options of the things that they could do: a strength challenge where he would summon his champion and fight theirs. I wanted something that would force someone to kind of like use their brain, which was wits, and I figured, okay, it'll be like a riddle. And the riddle that I chose was ironically the thing that they were making, which was a deal. And I figured, oh, this is kind of like on the nose. So the answer to this. And then the last one was just pure luck. I was like that. The last one is like, if you just want to go for it, like 50-50 chance. Actually, it wasn't 50-50 because it's a Vondra's favor, but it's like craps game. If you do it, you win kind of thing. And so I wanted to have those options, and then on top of that I wanted the option of you could just like head on fight and there was the potential to win there, or you could have someone kind of fake play and then be kind of sneaking off with the people and just book it. And that's kind of like what I expected. I expected the weird thing for me out of the group was as soon as I was like, you fail, I was like, he goes to put the chains on you. Like, no one was like, fuck that, like, off we go. It was like, he took the first person, then he took the second person. And I was like, none of them are fighting this. They're just getting taken. And so it was just very strange for me, like, that.
Yeah, they were playing very fair.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't expect that from adventurers. Like, I was like, yeah, they're going to be sneaky or snooty about something. But yeah, they unfortunately that's just how it went, and thanks to the lucky persuasion at the very very end, they got away with
their
what
lives.
they needed, their lives. They lost a few things, important things, but yeah.
Yeah, so you were expecting there to be like a chase scene through the desert, because you mentioned like during the stream that you were not expecting them to do what they did.
Yeah, I wasn't actually expecting much of a chase scene. Like, he probably would have gone. He had to be there to meet with a group. And he knew how close to the city this area was. The way that I was playing him was he came upon these 2 people. That wasn't what he was there for. They just kind of happened upon him and decided to play a game with him, and he was like, great, if I get this extra,
sure,
fine. But had they have kind of taken them away from him, he wouldn't have been like, I have a vendetta against you for the rest of your lives. No, he had his reason for being there, and he wasn't going to go, like, they were going to be there in the next like little while, and he wasn't just going to go. He maybe would have chased them a few feet, but they would have gotten away. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So Jake, Oriana got to save the day.
Oh.
Yeah, tell me about that like desperate last ditch attempt at convincing the Ifrit.
Yeah, well, Oriana was full on actually planning on revealing a lot of her backstory, thinking maybe that makes her worth more and would, he would let everybody go. Turns out he didn't really care about that part of it, but she did manage to persuade him, so that felt really good. But definitely, Oriana's been having a lot of sort of existential crisis lately about feeling useless as obviously came up later. So that was a good win for her, even though she didn't take it as a win at first.
Yeah, she had to kind of be bullied into feeling good about that one.
Feel good about yourself, damn it.
Yeah.
Respect yourself, god damn it. Yeah, so question, Serenity. While this was happening, were you like thinking to yourself, oh, I'm gonna have to like invent a whole jailbreak thing for if they get taken to if they get taken to the fiery realm?
It was gonna be a TPK. Like that was
really?
They weren't getting
that
out.
Was
like,
it?
Once the thing took them, there's no way they're getting out of the fire plane. Like they're gonna be in the middle of a city owned by Ifriti slavers. Like that how at this level they're not Vox Machina. They're not they're not level 16 where they have all the tricks up their sleeves. They barely have any items. And that was not going well for them. I was really, really worried. I didn't know what I was doing at that point. There goes the
stream.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, how do I come back from this? I don't know what I'm going to do. Like the only one that was going to get away at the end there was Perry. She was the only one who hadn't made a deal with them and wasn't in the middle of being turned into shish kebab. And I was just worried. So yeah, had they have let someone go, that character, like had they have one person had gone and then they decided we're not doing this anymore, that person would have just been, they would have had to make a new character. Like they're not coming back from that, at least not unless they later down the line the party decided let's go to the fire plane and see if we can save this person. But even then it would be really hard to find them. They might be very different than who they were when they first came. So yeah, it was
very dire for a little bit.
It was.
Probably would have 2 eye patches.
Yeah. No, it was
just have a bandage at that point. I mean,
hey, he's the blind monk. He's the literal stereotype at that point.
Could be pretty cool. You don't know. Yeah. Speaking of Dobby, you found your knives only to have one of them ripped away right away.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Then later on, you had an interesting conversation / lecture / almost pep talk. So how is Dobby doing right now?
I mean, in a mindset of like overall, it's just kind of like miasma of emotion and shit. Like he was depressed, and then immediately he was just brought into this question. It's like, oh yeah, here's your fucking dagger, and he's like, oh shit, okay, cool. And he's like, oh yeah, kind of, the technically love of your life, she's kind of alive. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I thought she was dead. Okay, cool. It's another layer upon layer. It's an emotional onion, one might say,
One might say.
It's not just like one emotion. It's kind of like this combined mindset that he's in right now. And I'd say overall, he's very confused. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we've been learning a decent amount about Dobby's apparently quite tragic backstory.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens next there. Dobby's having an episode. It'll probably keep going.
Yeah, man. Hey, Dobby's like the unluckiest halfling probably out there.
He just got some good news. What do you mean unluckiest?
Yeah, but like, Rethus was like...
And unluckiest, he lost his stuff. He found it.
Yeah.
He lost it again because of his own shit. Got it back, and then was told, I think he's pretty goddamn lucky.
Hey, man. 2 sides of the same coin.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Also, he has a god that just wants to love him. That's pretty lucky.
Hey, man. He's been hurt.
Or rather, does he?
My god, specifically? I mean, I guess.
Hey, man. Hey, you just gotta wait till the backstory, dude.
Oh my god.
Wait.
You have to let Butcher go, man. Or kill him. One of those. One of those. One of the two.
One of those things. Just one of those things.
No choice.
Catharsis. Okay, so... Yeah, man, rough episode. So tell me a bit, because, like, as we sort of touched on before... Oriana took some convincing to realize that she had actually sort of saved the day and should maybe feel proud about that. So what was she planning to do? Like when she tried to run away, just go and sulk, or?
In the tavern. Yeah. I don't really know. I don't really know what she would have done. I was kind of playing it by ear at the time, and just like she would go down to eat, and then she would leave. And at that point, nobody had really been trying to talk to her or interact with her really, so there wasn't really anything for me to do except say, Oriana's getting up to leave. And thankfully, they stopped her. But yeah, she probably would have gone up to the room. She probably would have sulked. I don't know. It's possible she may have left a note and just left in the middle of the night.
Man, goodbye, Oriana. Luckily, we still get to hear her now mediocre playing. She had a little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, can both of you tell me a little bit more about what the item that you lost meant to you? Because Dobby lost his little knife, little stabber, and Ori lost her book, which was given to her by her mentor, I believe.
Yes. Well, I don't know. Did we work out if that was actually given to her by Damien, or if she just got it later?
It wasn't given to her by Damien, but she wrote a lot of notes and stories and how she had learned her craft and everything like that in there. Plus all of the new latest tales of them going through Dash and Ivor and Dahana and all of that stuff, and then the gods and everything like that. Like, she's been collecting all of these stories and creating shanties and songs and things like that, and that was all in there. It's very personal.
Yeah. You could say it was her collection of bardic knowledge, all of her songs, everything. Yeah. So it was more than personal. It was like a part of her at this point, because she's becoming... I like to think that Oriana really wasn't a bard until right before the campaign, but this is definitely now a significant part of her life and is a part of her.
So it was really a big emotional loss. But luckily, it wasn't a spell book.
I should probably write things down in my notes better than just spellcraft book.
I mean, it saved you, so maybe take worse notes. I don't know. That might be the lesson learned here. Take terrible notes, guys.
I will say this. I'm glad it was... Well, I'm not glad. I'm more glad that it was the book than it was the violin, because that's what I thought she was going to take.
Yeah.
I thought that too, dude. I was like, oh shit, she's just going to be a bard that
sing.
Does, like,
she's going to sing.
Yeah. Which might actually just be better,
Yeah.
Because those performance checks,
Can Oriana sing? No.
No, Oriana can sing. That was me just shaking my head at Jay.
Oh, okay.
She can sing.
Man.
It's not her preferred method of casting her spells, but...
AKA, it's not good. Okay, cool. I'm joking. I'm so joking.
She is a shy, demure little girl, okay?
Dude.
Is she, though?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
She's a proper lady.
Is she, though?
She is, yes.
She is nobility.
I mean, I don't know, like, she could be a freak in the sheets. I don't know, but everyone else, she's a proper lady.
Jake, is she?
Decline to comment.
She has a German accent, okay? That means she's kinky.
BDSM is her thing.
Chains and whips. Oh.
The safe word is...
I can't say that.
Exactly. Oh, man.
Be that one scene in Eurotrip.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible. Okay, tell us about your poor little stabber, R.I.P. I think we totally discussed
that's what I'm going to
again.
call it from now on. Poor little stabber.
Poor little stabber, dude.
R.I.P. Your dad, R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P.
Yeah, I mean, for Ebony, it has a very deep connection to Dobby. I mean, if most people remember, Dobby told Ball, and a story of how he got it, but being Dobby, everything's a story, everything's a lie. They're gonna tell you the truth. You don't need to know. But yeah, no, it has a very deeper connection than Dobby's really told anybody. Also because he still has that layer. Even with Sinric, he still has that layer of things he hasn't told Sinric. Um, Sinric just thinks like, hey, Dobby, he's done things, but he doesn't know the things he's truly done. And for the reasons he did those things. So people just gotta wait until like someone just cracks that final little wall Dobby kind of keeps in. Because once that happens, the floodgate, it's just
And
things.
it's the gooey center of
Yeah.
Dobby.
Yeah, sometimes the gooey center isn't all that good.
You crack it open, but it's tar. Just like I thought this was gonna be jam or something. Yeah. So in Dobby's like
soul.
yeah. So in Dobby's like end of
Dobby's the
episode
BBG.
vision. Oh my God. In Dobby's end of episode vision, he was essentially told that, hey, you're kind of still going because of your companions. Is he taking that into account, or is he just too emotionally distraught right now to really accept the wisdom of that?
I mean, hey, companions help get Dobby back, his most cherished possession. So, that really means something to him. And then, him with the Arathis, he was like, she's a bitch. I don't really trust her. And then, she's like, hey, idiot, here's your dagger back. Also, fucking work with your people. Don't be an ass. It's like, okay, got me the dagger back. I'll listen to you. Still a bitch though.
On one condition.
On one condition. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you'll see like Dobby, like, he's even now, like in this whole endeavor, regular Dobby would have gotten the fuck out of there. He would have already saw, like, by the time, 3 people already went in, it was technically like him, Sinric, and Perry. He would have been like talking to Sinric like, yo, we need to get the fuck out of here. But, he was willing to risk, his neck out for Ball at least,
Yeah.
because technically he, Ball's kind of, his part-time
Buddies. They're buddies.
They're like BFFs, yo.
Yeah.
associate.
The bromance is real.
Yeah.
So really, guys. So real.
They gotta do Ball and Dobby's investigations.
They're gonna get matching tattoos soon enough.
Yeah, next time they have some free time and some money, they just turn up with like a full sleeve, completely matching.
No, it's gonna be Baltime's face on Dobby's shoulder and Dobby's face on Baltime's shoulder.
Yeah, it's gonna be best buds for life. And then somebody's gonna be like, yo, what happened, man?
Amazing.
Wouldn't care.
Yeah, Sidney could be like,
He'd be like, oh, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Oh, cool beans. So how nervous are you guys now feeling about going into the desert now that you've sort of experienced some of the hardships and turmoil that can happen out there in the sandy wastes?
Oh gosh. I think Oriana probably feels a little more confident about it because she now knows, like, oh, there's stuff like this out here. Okay, maybe we just, don't interact with something that is clearly out of our league. Just, run away.
Yeah.
Yeah, she values it as a learning experience, not as a oh, we probably shouldn't.
In Dobby's case, he's always willing and ready to run away. I mean, you can already see this when the guards were coming in. He does not like the popo. But yeah, no, I mean, in Dobby's sense, he knows his limitations. He knows like shit when it gets real. It's just when it comes to Perry and Quinn, they are the moral compass of the group, and they when an innocent person is involved, they go in, head first. So it's kind of difficult, to kind of rein them back and be like, sometimes you're gonna run away, or die.
We gotta go.
Yeah, we just gotta go,
Gotta go or get paid.
Hey,
One of these.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, it's literally, a flick of a coin. You don't know what type of situation you're gonna get into. You know, I just hope that it's not a TPK situation next time. But knowing Serenity, any situation's a TPK situation.
Sandworms. Next episode.
You don't know.
You know?
Just a reskinned purple worm.
I mean, I try not to make it TBK. I mean, I tried. I did want to have side quests that were like one thing I do like is
Mhm.
I do like to have like areas and places where like you can choose to go there. Just like in any like RPG or any other world, like you can choose to go there. You can choose, like they could choose to go to the Shadowlands right now. Will they survive it?
Who
Probably,
knows?
probably not. Um, you know, but like there are things that you could go up against. You could fight an ancient dragon right now. You could probably find one. Do you want to? Probably not. And I like having those situations where it's like you see something and you can size it up similar to other things sizing you up, and you can make a decision of like, is taking it head on the right answer in this situation, or is there another way of handling this? Whether that be like walking away at this point and saying like we can't do it, or finding a different way of figuring it out, and maybe that includes cut and running in a way. So I like having those, and I've had various adventures where it's like this is actually hard, to this is going to require you to talk your way out, to all sorts of stuff. And I like that, because in the real world it's in reality you are going to come up against things that are stronger than you. And what's your answer to that? Is it like, if it's just, we're just going to head on this every single time, eventually you're going to hit that wall, and that's going to come back to bite you. And so it's trying to figure out other ways of dealing with situations, given the myriad of skills in this group. Like, everyone brings something to the table, so there has to be something that someone can potentially do and work with, to figure the situation out. So
Yeah, which, to add on to that, yeah, that's something like a great thing that a DM always has that in their mindset, is the ability to kind of understand and see kind of the possibilities of each and every one of your players could do with their character, and always kind of integrating that into any situation that they kind of find themselves in. Like, yeah, you can always make your character feel like, oh yeah, like you're constant, like you're this hero that you can constantly do everything, and have them go from one situation to another situation. Maybe it's combat, maybe it's doing something else, but keeping it kind of real, and kind of in a sense of any situation can either go very well or very bad depending on the type of actions you take,
Mhm.
or something you incorporate in.
yeah, and it's just trying to get them to think like outside the box. Like, I reward for like really thinking outside the box, but like this is why I was like, I take pictures of like what spells they're taking and stuff like that, to try and think of, oh, they were like interesting.
Mhm.
Like, had they have like, Perry had erupting earth. Had she have erupted earth in his face, and then someone grabbed the chains and taken them, and then Ori used dissonant whispers to make him fear, there's a way for like, there's a lot of stuff that they have in their repertoire to like make it work. And so like there was multiple ways of having things go positively for them, and for me to reward that kind of stuff. It's just in the moment. I know
Mhm.
as a player in the moment, it's like, oh shit,
Sometimes you
how are
just
we?
don't think of
Yeah,
it.
you don't think of it. But I try to like think of like, okay, yeah, if they do this in this situation, that could go really well for them. And so when they do, the thing is most players don't think of that stuff right away, but it's that like one battle or that one moment where they're like, I'm going to try this thing. And when that happens, it's so amazing, because it
It's so
doesn't
cool,
happen
yeah.
often. And so I like
Yeah.
rewarding that kind of play, and it doesn't happen often because people get like stuck in their head or get panicked and they're like, oh my god, everyone's dying. But you see it, and when it does happen, it just feels so good as a player. And so I like to reward that. And so I always try to give situations where like, if you choose to do that, it'll it'll go out really well. And then also I try obviously reward, like if a natural 20 happens in the right place, like when Sinric had that natural 20 in the spider lair, I was like, yeah, he had a natural 20, and he's raging, he just breaks, like, fuck being restrained. He's just coming out of that and like going to town. And so I like rewarding that as well. So I think there are those moments. It's just players kind of have to find them and think about them.
Yeah, I think it's always good to have like the opportunity to be creative, because that's always, as Serenity was saying, that's always super cool when it happens and when it works, and it's super funny when it happens and it doesn't work. So really win-win.
Yeah.
Awesome. And this ties perfectly into our topic for the day, which is starting out as a new DM. So we've just talked about rewarding creativity, but what you've all DM'd, I know you have. What would everyone's like number one tip for a new DM be, if you could break it down or pick one?
I have one. Dude, just like have fun with it, man. D&D, especially 5e, dude. It's so fluid. Like, you can always, depending on you, it's always your discretion as a DM to mix and match, do things what you want. I always kind of try to make my combat as dynamic as possible. So, if a character really thinks like, hey, I just want to attack this guy's, hand, try to see if I can maybe disarm him at a possible. So depending on, like how from the difficulty scale, 10 to 20, and then I'd also incorporate that into the attack as well. So if an attack hits, and depending on the number of the attack, then I have them roll like, athletics or basic strength check, and then if that's good, then yeah, they both attack and then both disarm the character as well. That's not in the Dungeon Master's Guide at all. I just like doing that personally because I think, it makes combat more fluid. You're doing more actions, you're always affecting the area and the mobs, to your own discretion.
I think my go-to tip for people new to DMing would be don't get caught up on the planning too much. I remember my first full campaign session. We did something in like the very opening quest, and they went on like a completely different track than what I expected. And I'm like, okay, I really should have planned for that. And I spent like the next like 2 months of the game over planning every tiny little detail. And it got to the point where I was getting so frustrated with creating stuff for the game that I ended up just kind of dropping all preparation for a while and just saying, you know what, they're so chaotic in their choices and I can't prepare for everything, so let's just see what they want to do, and that became its own, set of problems too. So, you went from one extreme to the other. Don't plan for the plan to go awry, but don't think that you have to plan for everything. Shush, Jay. Shush.
For me, for a beginner DM, the number one thing is find a group that has similar style to you. I DM a certain way, and it's not for everyone. And I've had plenty of people who don't like it. And the worst thing in a game is when someone starts head-on arguing with you. It's not fun for the rest of the players. It's not fun for you, and it feels like shit. And it feels like you're a shitty DM. And you turn around and you're like, no, I'm not. Like this is how I play. And so just sitting down with people and being like here's kind of the story I want to tell, and obviously compromising with players as well. Like they're not. No one's ever going to be 100% exactly like you. But sitting down and sort of laying out like the kind of role play that you want to have. Like if you're the type that just wants to like dungeon crawl and just have tons of fights and make it harrowing and that's it, then make sure that the players enjoy that. If you're more of like you don't really like fights and you just want to story tell, then maybe you have you talk with your group about that. Like I am kind of in the middle. I think fights are great for fights, but I hate running. Like I really hate running them. I find them fucking boring. And I just don't like them, and which is why I kind of make them epic. And I generally don't run like I'll do a dungeon crawl very rarely. But that's why I do like you only see me ever have battle maps. Because I don't do like I hate having to like reveal area like that. I hate that. But yeah, like that's just the type of person I am, and that's the type of story that I run. And so I think like as a DM, it's just sitting down and finding those people, and then at that point, it's really easy to just have fun and kind of like tell a story and not have to worry about the rules or anything, because the people that you're playing with will trust you and trust that they want to have the same type of fun as you. So.
Ooh, also to add on, just look at, I guess, like pictures and images for me. I don't know. I don't really get ideas like off the bat. It's like I resources like outside stimulus that I see or hear. I just kind of always like have a notebook or like make a note on my phone. It's just like, oh, that'd be a cool idea. Maybe I should come back to that. Or like, oh, that's a cool picture or a cool type of map. Let me save this here. And then I could always incorporate it somewhere. Always kind of absorb what's around you and then just utilize it where you can. So it's like it's not taxing. It's always kind of fun, like a treasure hunt. You're always looking for the next thing.
Pinterest.
Exactly.
Pinterest is great, yeah.
Pinterest is probably your best friend.
Super great. Let's see. So, as someone, for someone who has like never run a campaign before, like what's the best way to kind of like suss out and figure out what kind of campaign you want to run initially, if that makes sense? Because I think probably when you're a beginner, like you have either so many ideas or you don't have or you have what feels like no ideas at all. How do you find like the one thing that's going to work for you? Is it just like experience that tells you that, like advice?
I think looking at a few like of the modules probably would kind of give you an idea of like generally how to run something. But I think like for me, I think of a game as like a novel or a movie or a comic book series. Or like it generally has like I think like definitely know how long do you want to run the campaign. That will give you an idea of like, do you want to start at like level 1? Do you some people hate level 1 to level 3, so they just start people at level 3. Some people will just start a thing at level 5 because that's when you get like your spike, and then you can kind of do fun stuff after. But it's like, when do you want to end? Do you want to go to level 20? Because things get a little weird and fuzzy between 15 and 20 in 5e. Like you just get really super powerful, and it's hard to throw challenging things at players. But yeah, kind of know that. Then from there, it's kind of like deciding like what is the story you want to tell? Like ultimately, where do you want to go with this? I generally create like three arcs, almost like beginning, middle, and end of like the story that I want to tell, and I have those planned out. And then from there you could just start crafting. And it's up to you on before the game starts or before you start the full on campaign. Is like how much of this world do you want to build, or do you want to build on the fly kind of thing. So yeah, that's generally how I start out is working backwards from like I have my general arc. I know how long I want this campaign to be, and then I look at character backstory and I'm like, okay, how can I place this in to make it organic and feel right?
The way I do mine is kind of like I start out with like a spider web map, and I start with a theme. What do I want the overall tone to be? And kind of from there it goes into settings, and then from settings it kind of goes into like rules of the world, and then characters, and then locations, and so on and so forth. And it kind of branches out until you kind of had this like a huge kind of brain map that people look at and you think like it's insane, but you can just be like, oh dude, this is crazy, and then you kind of slowly piece it together like a puzzle, and then that's how I create a game, dude. I know it's weird for some, but others might actually like that might work for them. So kind of just start from one section, and then it'll kind of be like progression steps to move to the overall kind of picture you're gonna see towards the end.
I would definitely start with what kind of story you want to tell. Do you want this to be a happy-go-lucky romp through a fantasy world? Do you want this to be a very character-driven story of their backstories all either connect to each other in some way or connect to the main plot of the story you want to tell in some way, kind of like Vox Machina did in a way in Critical Role? Or is this just something that you just wanted to see exist and you don't really have a story? In that case, just kind of take what you're given in terms of your players and maybe just focus on individual stories at a time. But it all really boils down to the story you want to tell. And if there isn't a story, find one.
Good advice. It's a little bit off topic, but I actually wanted to ask, like, have you guys ever ran or played a game that like went to the high levels, like 16 to 20? Because I haven't. I'm wondering what those are like.
The highest I've ever gone in 5e, I want to say, was from starting at level 1 was probably 10. I think it was not higher than that. The only times I played characters higher level than that were like one shots.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I actually, as Serenity was saying, I'm kind of the individual that just like starts at 3 because I feel like you already kind of know what you want your character to be, and so I start from there, and I usually end. For me, I think the one game I did was around level probably 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was grueling because anytime a character would die, or any type of resurrection, I'm the type of character that, hey, do you? But if you do make those kinds of choices, I kind of penalize a little bit, just so if there is like a TPK or like there is like a kind of section that they were doing a little weird, I kind of have them start out from a lower level than they were originally, just so that they know it's still a grind in a sense. So yeah, that's just how I do it. So, yeah.
Me? No, I've never. Well, I think like 10, probably the highest. I've played a couple that have like started high level. They've never gone very far. I think it's harder to like start super high level because then you have to like already drum up all of this, like, why is your character kind of like a demigod at that point? Like, why are they so well traveled? And like trying to integrate with like the rest of a group is difficult if they don't mesh well. But yeah, no, I haven't. A lot of DMs don't like a lot of DMs that I've played with don't like going high, and like I said, it's kind of because the PCs break at a certain point. Like, they just get so powerful that it's really hard to throw stuff that like is challenging at them. And for a lot of people, they'll just get they'll get bored with that kind of stuff. And I think that's why a lot of DMs like won't go that way. Whereas some, if you're like if you're very story driven, like super challenging combat is maybe not your goal. And so that then getting to those higher levels is not like, if you kill something, it's like, whatever, that's not the point anyways. It's like the journey that's happening to get to where you're going. And so I think there are a lot of DMs that don't do that because they don't like, a lot of people really enjoy combat and really want to see like the difficulty and want to, but I hate it. So for me, it's a story, and I'm happy to go to 20.
Well, at a certain point, you do have to start like fighting gods, which could be very interesting, I think. Like, personally, I think be interested in running like a high level campaign just because I like the character driven stuff. I want to see like the difficulties of essentially being a demigod or a group of demigods in society. Like, what the fuck are you doing now? Who are you? That could be very interesting. Anyway, I digress. So last week we did talk about pre-made models, and then Jake mentioned them briefly. So do you consider like pre-made models like the default thing that a new DM should start with, or would you recommend they start homebrewing right away, or does it depend?
I I I don't know actually. There's pros and cons to running a model first as your like first ever foray into DMing. The pro being that obviously you don't have to worry about creating the whole world. It's already there for you. You know, if you were running Strahd, you don't have to create Barovia. It's already there. But the con side to that is that you don't understand the world. So you have to put in the time to research the module and, you know, figure out, okay, if the party goes here, what happens? If the party goes here, what happens? It's not something where you can just improv it unless your party is okay with going through a homebrewed version of Barovia or something like that. Again, when you talk about homebrew as your first world, my first foray into DMing was a purely homebrewed world, mostly because I just didn't have a lot of D&D experience at that point.
Me too, buddy. I didn't want to read. I did not want to read the books.
Did not want to read, dude.
Nope.
I played, I think it was like 2nd edition back in college once or twice.
Dude.
And then I had a bunch of friends who were into D&D, and I was thinking, you know, it'd be nice to play some D&D. But nobody wanted to DM, so I offered to DM it, and that was my first foray. And I made a completely homebrewed world. And the struggle with that was just, again, what if the party doesn't do what you expect them to do? And how do you adapt to that? You don't have a book to tell you, okay, well, they went to this place, so this happens. So I don't know if I would recommend one over the other. I would say think about how you would want to DM and then pick what feels right. Is it easier for you to just read the whole, you know, book of Curse of Strahd and then run a campaign on it? Or is it easier for you to just create your own world and have the freedom to do whatever you want with it?
Thank you. Thoughts from Jake.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, you go, Serenity.
I was just gonna say, like, I think it just depends on the person. Like, really, there are some people who are like super comfortable just going off and telling a story in a world that, like, some people just have such active imaginations. It's amazing, and they can just like the world that you created, Truth, when we played. That was so awesome, and I think you had only been just DMing for your family, right? Like before.
Yeah, I've been running a game for my mom and my brother,
Yeah.
which is actually like in the same universe but in a different country.
Yeah, and
I want to go back there so bad.
Yeah.
We will go back to Talmontage one day.
Yeah,
I swear.
And so you created
Talmontage?
that. Yeah, it was
Talmontage.
Talmontage. Yeah. It was really great, and it didn't feel like at all that you didn't have a sense of what you wanted to, what story you wanted to tell, and what you wanted to do with the world. And so I think it was a fantastic game to play.
Cute.
But then I think that there are people who are just terrified of that, and having a module and having some guidelines for which way to go is like a safety blanket for a lot of people starting to DM. And I think it really just depends. Like, for some people that's a comfortable place to be in, and they can still veer off the path a little bit, and players can do so, but they at least have some guidelines and things to rein in if that should happen. Whereas, like, in your own world, if people decide, like, if you're like, well, here's the main quest, and they're like, no, we want to go in this direction, it's like, now you got to figure out, like, what are you doing, and how do you mold your story so that, like, oh, if they decide to go eastward, you can still get your main plot points in and things like that. And that can be a little more daunting for people. So I think it really just depends on the person and how they feel. And I think my first DMing was to homebrew as well, just because I have a bunch of thoughts in my head and things that I like to to do, and also because there are so many, like if you think of the world that is used for D&D now, that has like
Faerun?
never, yeah, Faerun, like that has
Yeah.
never winter, and Baldur's Gate. There are so many are like actual like AAA games that have created stories around. It can be daunting going in that role and like doing something wrong, like wrong in the sense of like that these game like direction that these games in, or you don't play a character as people have
As it's supposed to.
traditionally seen
Yeah.
them or whatnot, and so you're taking on personality of something
You have
that
to like
someone
learn
else
about
is.
the spell plague, and I don't want to read about the
Yeah,
spell
you know,
plague.
like it can be daunting if you're not, you know, well versed in that, and so it really depends on the type of person you are and what you feel comfortable with, to be honest. I think.
Yeah, man. Homebrew gang, you know. Did
We're all in the
not,
homebrew gang.
dude. I did not want to read like modules at all, dude. I was like, oh,
Mood.
yeah, because I think I came into D&D at like 3.5, and then there was nobody to really play with, and I was like, okay, this is a lot. And then I went to like, and I just started strictly just a player for 5e, but then like I said, like a lot of like a lot of my games were just cut short because of like DM and player situations. So I was like, yo, yeah, let me just do it myself. And I was looking at modules, didn't want to do modules. I was like, hey, I played enough games. I could do this, and it was rocky at first. I always have an understanding like group of players, and just have fun with it, dude. Like, fuck, man. At one point, I had them fighting a dire bunny, dude. It was crazy.
That's great.
Yo, dude, just go weird with it, man. At just some point, you just gotta laugh. Ugh.
Get weird, guys. Make it weird always.
It's true.
Okay, so I think one of the things that definitely me and perhaps some other beginning DMs are unsure about is like what kind of prep you should do and how much. Jake talked before about like finding the right balance between prepping and being able to be flexible and being able to improvise in the moment. I know Serenity does a ton of improv, and because this party never does what she expects ever. So I think the biggest question is like, how do you prep? Just what on earth do you do?
I have a document of like 70,000 words. But that's for this campaign. Because I want to be eloquent enough in my visuals for people watching. Generally, I don't do that much prep, but I literally am writing like full on sentences of like cities and like what they're seeing, so that people watching can also visualize like, oh, okay, this is what this looks like. But generally, I do very point form kind of notes of, here are 3 potential directions that the players are going to get. And if they go down this one versus this one versus this one, here are the potential things that could happen. And then it's very like loosey goosey. And the way that I'll do things is I'll generally create encounters that can happen anywhere. So I can slot them in, unless it's like a specific boss for like, the end of an adventure, or wouldn't show up, down this path. But like generally, if it's just like, okay, they're it does, whether they go through a forest or whether they go travel on the road in a grassland, or whether they go up the mountain, here is like an encounter that they could potentially have and would make sense. I generally do that, and then I can just shift it to whatever like scenery it needs to be. And that's kind of how I set my stuff up. And again, a lot of it is I know who my major players are in the world that I kind of like want them to meet, and just putting them in specific areas to help further flesh out the story and tell it. But yeah, not this campaign is like normal campaign is definitely point formed, and just kind of like, here's kind of what I want to do. And even if they go in a completely opposite direction, I can still steer things to make it not feel like they're on rails and like they're being forced in a certain direction, but I can still keep the main parts of the story cohesive, so that they know where the next place is, and kind of where the story is heading.
Me, I just do basic, just world stuff. and then just rules, locations, places, and then that's it. I kind of just goes balls to the wall, and I usually record myself when I'm DMing, so
Oh,
that when I'm going in it, like I can remember what I said because I'm going in because I have because if you look out there, there's a bunch of DM resources you can do, just random generation stuff. So you're just constantly on the move, constantly going. It kind of keeps you on your toes, which I like as a DM, you know. And then you can just kind of plug and play and just see where your party kind of goes. I mean, I remember there was I did a whole campaign and there was like no kind of like big bad guy at the end, and then I think what they did was they were kind of like they were kind of like following this dude, and he was just this kind of like suspicious looking dude, and they followed him throughout the entire city, and then I just kind of went with it, and so it became this entire conspiracy with this whole city, and that they were kind of like this secret government cult, and were
the
slowly
Margrave.
the Margrave.
The
No,
Margrave.
Amalgamations
Amalgamations
Lemoyne.
no more.
That's an inside joke from our Monday game.
Yeah,
Love
but
sharing
they
inside jokes with the people who don't watch the game.
Yeah, but there's these cultists that followed this group called the Valmorum, which were these kind of like collective individuals that were trying to bring back this ancient god, which
Hmm.
was cast away, which all the other gods, you know, good and evil, bound like came together to kind of get him away from the world, and these like people were trying to bring him back. So that I just came out of that with nowhere, and I was like, oh shit, okay, cool, yeah, I can roll with this. And I was listening to myself, and I was like, okay, yeah, let's write this down. And you know, you just kind of go with it, and then I molded the story around it until it kind of became solid. And even then, it was just the skeleton that I just added pieces to, but until it became a ending campaign, which was cool. And they they never believed me when I was like, yeah, this is total bullshit. I'm fucking pulling this out of my ass.
Making this up as I go, guys.
Oh man.
I when I'm planning, when I'm doing this kind of stuff, I normally try and limit descriptions of a city, if it's like a smaller city, down to like a paragraph. And if it's a larger city, maybe like a paragraph for the city at large and maybe like a couple sentences on each district in the city. In terms of like, BBEGs and stuff like that, I try not to plan way far down the line because they could kill the guy I have planned as a BBEG before he becomes the BBEG. Instead, I like to create different plot threads and just see how those develop over time. In our current Wednesday game, there's a plot thread who was developed as an antagonist to a character who was originally part of the campaign who left. But it made sense to kind of continue that connection with another character that is currently playing. And then from there, they've sort of developed into the pseudo BBEG that they've already faced off against once, but weren't able to beat. So now maybe that person goes, gets stronger, comes back as the BBEG.
You never know. Awesome. So what would you guys say was like the number one lesson you learned from running your first game?
Know when to say kind of keep your party, from doing something completely like ridiculous. To the point where it would ruin the game for not only them but yourself. But having kind of the ability to gauge, what they're doing and then kind of match their energy and then just roll with it. So it's kind of that being able to be both malleable and then stern at the same time. Know when to say no.
Be careful that the story you want to tell doesn't become the only story being told. My first full homebrew campaign, I guess technically it was my second. It became this whole thing where I went from so unstructured in my first campaign to so structured in my second campaign that it wasn't until about, 3 months into playing the game that I realized, oh, they haven't decided where they wanted to go once since we started this campaign. I've just been telling them, oh, you should probably go here next.
Mm.
So be careful that your story's not getting in the way of the player's story.
Just be flexible. I think that's mine.
Just be flexible.
You will have to improv more than you know, and don't be scared of it, and just go with it. The majority of the time, your players have no fucking clue that you're pulling shit out of your ass. Yeah, they never know. And I end up telling them, like, after a game, I'm like that whole ending of the last session was complete, like, that was not planned at all. That was not in my notes, had nothing to do, it just came out of my head at the very, very end, and I was like, yeah, this makes sense, like, this is how we're going to do it. And generally, like, your players will just be, most of the time, be impressed. They'll be like, wow, that was really good, I enjoyed that. And so just don't be scared to, like, take things in weird and wild directions, because majority of the time people will enjoy it. And if they don't, your players will usually give you a heads up and be like, that was kind of weird, and you can adjust for that next time. But I would say majority of the time, improv tends to bring out some of the most interesting stories. So.
Yeah, I think people have a lot, like, more ability to tell spontaneous stories than they think they do. I definitely could never tell when Serenity was improv. I've always been impressed by that. Let's see. For me, I think definitely the one thing that I learned was early game team bonding is so important, because I could not keep you guys fucking together in the same place.
I know we were always doing other stuff.
Always doing other stuff. They sided with 3 different factions. There were 3 factions. We had them evenly split amongst the 3.
Each one of us went
split. Amazing. Yeah. It was fun. It was great, but, like, I had to, like, run several different games because you guys were all.
And it's hard, right? Because if you have certain players, like, sitting there waiting. Like, it's okay every once in a while, but if it's every game where it's like, okay, an hour is spent on you, and then an hour is spent on you, and then an hour is spent on this other person, and then by the end of the session, everyone's played an hour, but then the other 2, they're, like, watching, and no one's together and can't make decisions, and they're learning all of this stuff, but stuff that they can't use because, like, out meta-wise, they don't know it. That it can be really, really difficult. That was for this group, that was, like, a hard thing because I knew Dobby was going to be like, I don't fucking. So I was like, no, I'm just going to have them all marked, and they're just going to have to kind of. It's going to be told that they kind of have to stick together, and there's still options. He's still made choices, like, as Dobby, to go off, and has had things happen, and that still sometimes they do things separately, but I think they're starting to learn that, like, together is. In general, together is the right way to do things, and yeah, you have to kind of find that with your group. Also, have players that understand that, yes, you will have clashing personalities, and this is something to sit down with your players and talk about, but, like, at some point you have to, like, for the good of the group, make a decision to, like, okay, we're gonna stick together,
Should railroad you guys more. Anyway, so that's our time for tonight. Thank you guys so much. I hope you've learned something for all you beginning DMs, and hopefully learned something for all you not beginning DMs too. Yeah. Stick around afterwards for links. See us next week on Tuesday, and see the next episode of Roll for Damage on Friday.
Yeah, our 20th. 5 months.
Oh, the 20th episode.
Yeah.
Yay! Yep. Big anniversary. Definitely tune in for that. I can't promise that there'll be anything cool, but I'm sure Serenity has something planned.
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. Good night, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.